Hi, my name is Vanessa Beasley, and I'm Dean of the Martha Rivers Ingram Commons here at Vanderbilt University. For our Commons reading this year, we're reading for the second consecutive year, Strong Inside, Perry Wallace and the Collision of Race and Sports in the South by Andrew Maraniss. Strong Inside is the story of Perry Wallace, who came to Vanderbilt in 1966 and would ultimately break the color line in the SEC by being the first Black basketball player to be on a varsity team. I've gathered with some students today to talk about one of the themes that we think is important in the book. And this is in fact a theme you'll be discussing with your Visions group once you get to campus. And that theme is resilience. When Mr. Wallace was on our campus in the late 60s, he had to show a lot of resilience, both on the basketball court, in the classroom, in his dorm rooms, even in the community through Nashville. And we were thinking and reflecting about one story in particular where he was playing a basketball game where he took a really hard hit, and it was actually debilitating. And in the book, as you'll see when you read it, he reflects on the fact that he really felt quite alone, not just because he took the hit, but also because even none of his teammates acknowledged the pain that he was in. So I've gathered some students so we could talk a little bit, as you will in your Visions group, about this moment in the book, what it meant to them, and also about that concept of resilience. What does resilience mean to you?
I mean, I can go first, I guess. For me, I think it's important to distinguish there's a lot of different kinds of resilience, just like there are many kinds of people. And there's this story really sort of made me think about group resilience versus personal resilience. And in this moment, we see Perry Wallace going through a lot of personal resilience because there was sort of a lack of community. But in some cases, there are instances that we all go through where if we don't have the personal strength to sort of maintain that resilience, we have our community resilience that sort of comes in for us. And there's an interesting shift. And it's interesting that we don't often see both in the same instance, but this was a really, really excellent example of personal resilience in the face of a lack of community resilience.
Nice.
Yeah, I really like that point, Michael. I know that I feel like resilience a lot has to do with seeking this purpose and seeing that in the face of difficulty. So I know that earlier on in the book, Perry Wallace's story really started with him realizing that he would have to be a first, and that being a decision he made, he said, I'm committing to that decision. And so with that, he had to, in the face of those difficulties of getting hit so hard and not having any teammates that would support him, resilience in that moment was saying, this purpose that I have, this commitment I made, I'm going to choose that right now. And even choosing that, sometimes you have to choose not doing something because of that greater purpose. Maybe now is not the time. Maybe this is the time that I have to step back. But that's all for that purpose of seeing that and seeking that even in the face of like massive challenges is what I think resilience is.
Yeah.
Like going off of what both you, Elsa and Michael said, is that when you talk about community and personal strength, Perry Wallace came from a very strong Black community, and that community built him. He went to Pearl High School, and Pearl was known for its strong basketball team, for a strong community. He was a leader, and for him to decide to not go to the local HBCU and to instead choose Vanderbilt and choosing this role on a team, that required a lot of like personal strength and coming and understanding himself, and going to Vandy's team, being like the only Black player because the other one was injured, having to recognize that you don't have that community and having to like fulfill that role and finding strength within yourself on your own. So.
Yeah.
I love how you've all talked about the tension between community and individual kind of agency almost.
Yeah.
And also I hear the word choice a lot. So when you're thinking about the message that you'd like to give to incoming students about the choices that they're going to make when they're here and how to both be resilient themselves, but also how to make us all a more stronger, resilient community, do you have any advice, or do you have anything that you would ask them to start thinking about or think about during those first few weeks when they're trying to find some form of community?
Yeah. Sort of going back to what I was saying earlier and what we've all been saying about like the different kinds of resilience, I would definitely say it's important to recognize sort of the different levels and the varying degrees of resilience. For some people, that's taking a debilitating blow to the eye and continuing to play a basketball game. For some people, coming to a new community, coming to a college campus, that can be getting out of bed in the morning. And that's not like any less of a resilient sort of action for you to take. And sometimes it can feel, I'm not doing anything productive. But there is always resilience there as long as, like you said, you have that sort of that pulling thread that's really keeping you going, no matter how small the action is. I think it's important to recognize like the importance of that.
Cool.
I think resiliency has a lot to do with like taking care of yourself and a lot to do with self-care and what is good for you, because you have to be strong enough to like complete all 4 years. You have to choose like what journey you want to take, and each journey is so different, and you have to pace yourself, and sometimes that means pulling back and like reflecting on your choices and reflecting on who you are and who you want to be and how you can pursue whatever path that you take. So I feel like a lot of people forget that when they come to Vanderbilt, like they have these goals and they want to reach these goals, that sometimes it's okay to take that step back, to think about what is good for me. And sometimes what's good for you is not what you initially planned.
Yeah, sometimes rest, right? Sometimes to be resilient, you have to say, I'm going to step back and take a rest. What about you, Elsa?
I really think that I really like the idea of like taking a step back, because I think that's something we don't do enough. We don't devote enough time to doing that, because taking a step back allows you to actually have a conversation with yourself and saying, let me reassess, redress. And people also don't realize they have the opportunity to do that you can take a step back and try again and do that over again, or have that conversation over again, that you can apologize and try to redo that. And that not everything is just one and done, and that we shouldn't always like come to a situation with that kind of perspective. So I know that especially in our first years, it's a lot about learning about other people and learning about all these different perspectives that we've never experienced ever before. And so having the opportunity to say, hey, I didn't address that correctly, let me try again, let me try to learn from that. And so I think that's a really key part of like learning resiliency in college, is being able to reassess and redress situations.
Oh, thank you for this conversation. We wanted to do this just to give you a really small taste of what it's like to be in those Vanderbilt Visions groups and the kinds of things you'll be talking about. Again, as you saw us doing, connecting the themes from the book with also your own lived experience and some questions and experiences you'll have as you transition into our Vanderbilt community. I want to thank again my friends for being with me here today. And we also just want to reiterate our warm welcome to you. Read the book this summer if you can get it. Read the book once you get here on our campus. It'll have a note written for you by a current or former student with advice how to be strong inside. And we're so eager to welcome you to our Vanderbilt community.